right, peeps, welcome to the Culture and People cast. Today we have Ron Carucci. Ron, thanks for joining us today.
Mario, greetings in Wisconsin.
Yes, from Seattle, right?
Yep.
Great, great, great. So thanks for joining. In a few words, would you tell us who you are and what you do?
I am the managing partner and founder of a firm called Navalent, and we spend our days traipsing alongside leaders of large organizations, trying to help them either clean up the messes they made or avoid making any new messes or transform their enterprise in some way to help them reach opportunities that they have been long aspiring to reach.
That sounds familiar. Cleaning up. Everybody likes to think that our work is very proactive, but often it's very reactive, right?
Yeah.
I
No.
feel you.
Would that somebody would call me and say, "Hey, I'm thinking I might have a problem with this strategy next year. I'd like to get ahead of that." I don't know. I mean, I'd probably pass out.
Right? You'd be like, what? Who, me? Yes. Oh, I love it. So knowing that you've been at this work for a while in many different ways, you've got your work there, you've got 9 books, well, your ninth coming out. What is your favorite thing about advancing the topic of culture and people in the workplace?
I think first of all, I hate that it's become cliche, right? The word
Mm,
culture has 100 different meanings. Most people don't even know what it means. They
true.
misuse it terribly. But the ethos, the DNA of an organization, the fabric of who are we as a unit, right? I mean, I've always been fascinated by, human endeavor at scale. The fact that we can all do something together that we couldn't do alone is a profound and sacred reality. And
Mhm.
optimizing that so that people have incredible joy and do their best, their life's best work, and create something for the world that they couldn't create on their own, even globally, is extraordinary. And I hate seeing that get traipsed on and trivialized or abused. And when you see it work well, it's inspiring.
Yeah, agreed. I love how you put that. So you said people define culture in a lot of different ways, maybe even misuse it. What's your definition of culture?
How we do things around here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's sure your values on the wall should reflect that should define the culture. How often do you see people say, "Yeah, we really live by those values"? So now we have duplicity. That's a major problem, right? And so we say that, but we do this.
Mm,
So now you've already toxified the culture just by not doing what you said you were going to do.
yes.
And then when what we actually do is contradicting what you say on the wall, now you really have a problem, right? So that's problematic. But you have people who define culture as what org scientists used to call climate, right? What's the mood of the place? What's the employee engagement of the place? And so the answer to it is give them free lunches. Let's have foosball. Give them childcare on site, or send DoorDash to their homes now, as if those perks or that those expressions of care, and those are not bad, as if they define culture. Well, if everybody's not being that thoughtful and other oriented, it's not your culture.
Yeah.
It's a gimmick. Could be a great gimmick, and
Mm,
people appreciate it. But if the next day you then heap piles of work on somebody, or are abusive in a meeting, or disregard how hard they sacrificed to do something for you, and then send a DoorDash card again, people are going to get to see right through that. It's just like being in an abusive relationship with a spouse. You
yeah.
know, I beat you, then I send the flowers. I mean, that doesn't help.
Yeah. Smack sorry, smack sorry. Yeah. It happens far too often. Right. And I get it. Right. Those leaders have a lot of things to worry about, a lot of things to think about. And this is your most precious commodity, right? To leverage these people and invest in their whole humanity. Right. And I feel like that's shifting a little bit more than it shifted in the past. You feel?
Consciousness has raised. I think we
Mhm.
recognize that people are your most important asset is a little silly to say now, but because they're not an asset, they're not
Yep.
a product. They're humans. I think
Mm,
the biggest shift we have in the workplace, Anna, is that used to be that work was objectively measured because we all have the same output, the same remit. But today, your remit is your ideas, it's your creativity, it's your analysis, it's your projection, your predictions. Who you are and what you do is more closely fused than ever.
mm,
So you can't say anymore it's not personal. When I evaluate your work, I am evaluating you. And if I as a leader do not treat with dignity the contribution as a reflection of the contributor, but I try and keep those separate because I'm trying to be objective.
mm,
Now I've now hurt you
mm.
because I'm not recognizing you and your work as byproducts of each other, right? It's not just you produced 25 new t-shirts today, or you produced your 1,000, you know, microchips, or your 400 pairs of shoes, or your whatever your production number. That's not the vast majority of people in the workplace today. What they're producing is a reflection of themselves. And if you don't understand that, you're gonna tamper with their identity and hurt them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So since we've got a lot of these situations, right? Because right now I think we're retrofitting, right? We're taking this workforce that was primarily not remote first, and then we put them into a very scrappy version of remote work, right? And now we need to move to sustainable, whether we're going to stay remote, we're going to do hybrid, or we're going to go back in person, right? Whoever's talking about that. But we're retrofitting these people who managed to make it work before, who are trying to figure out how to make it work now, and are going to have to refigure it out again, right? What's some tactical advice that you have for the leader out there, or for even the employee who's saying, I want to do better in this situation?
Well, I think the reality is most of the data would say people thrived, right? Yeah, I mean, they figured the childcare. I mean, listen, there's something incredibly dopamine producing about having to go conquer the dining room or conquer the basement as your office or conquer childcare and remote school. But we did it, right? Now the sort of the adrenaline hangover is over. Now we have to figure out how to make it real. But most people are finding that the commute costs, the childcare costs, the increased productivity, it's been a wonderful thing, right? Now, how do you substitute cohesion that you can't get in the office? And the other one is boundaries, right? People are burning out because they're working 24/7. There's no the commute was your boundary.
Yes.
You know, the supermarket stop on the way home was your boundary. Now those are gone. And so I've seen leaders tell everybody has to take every 10th day off. Like your login credentials won't be allowed on. You're not to be seen in meetings. Every 10th day, you have to be off, and they're forcing it. I've seen leaders send the DoorDash cards to people's houses, right? So that you have food for the meal. That's having food arrive for meetings. So we used to cater in the conference room. Now we're catering at home. Right, so I've seen people do all kinds of creative ways to create the glue, right? The water cooler conversation has now become the virtual FaceTime chat, walking in the park. The cafeteria has now become, we actually plan to have our meals delivered at the same time and eat lunch together like this. Right, so we're actually consuming food and we're eating. We're just looking at each other on a screen. So people are trying to create new rituals that were the cohesive elements, right? There, the foosball game is being replaced by online Words with Friends, or other online games. So people are finding ways to do it, and where socializing is acceptable and it's working, people are going for walks, so they're meeting for coffee or they're doing things like that. So I've also seen where people are saying, "Hey, I'll come over and watch your kids while you go out with your husband." We'll sort of do switch childcare kind of thing. So people are, listen, we can no longer, the one, to your point before, Anna, the major shift is we can no longer say that our colleagues, our direct reports, personal lives aren't relevant to us. We're in their house. Right. We see the dirty laundry. We see the kids come screaming in the room. We say, "Sorry, I got to go help my kids with math. Be back in 5 minutes." Their personal lives are in our life now. That's just the way it is. And it's created this beautiful sense of a mess of humanity, right? We've all stood up in our boxer shorts. We've all done the Zoom faux pas, right? We've all had our kids come in and wipe our faces with whatever, screaming. Yeah. We watched the best and worst of each other's parenting. The whole, shut up.
Thought I was on mute, right?
Yeah, I was on mute. So the one time I thought I was going to be on mute, I wasn't. So anyway, but there's something so beautiful about that, right? Because now our hair's down, money left, and we have to be human. And so I think if we can figure out how to take some of that with us into this next chapter, we'll be great. Yeah. Leaders have to just work a lot harder at connecting with the people they lead and caring for them and checking in on them. Always check in before you check on, and just make a little more effort, because they're not going to pop into your office or your cubicle. You can't pop into theirs. Some leaders are doing the whole classic video on all day. They just leave people can't pop in. That's great. I wouldn't do it every day. You'll go nuts. But you could say office hours, right? Sure. Video's on for these 5 hours. Pop in if you need to.
Yeah, my door's open, right? Yeah,
instead of an open door policy, it's an open screen policy. But it works, right? So people are figuring it out. And as long as you're very clear on your intentions to care, very clear on your intentions to what you want to accomplish, and that you really, your physical distance doesn't mean you have to be emotionally distant.
Yeah.
We'll be great.
I know. I tell you, Ron, I spent 19 years inside companies before I've been out of my own for 5 years. And a lot of those years internally were spent frustrated that the player coach model is so flawed, right? Because our leaders, they're paid, that we give them more money, and like that's the next best thing to be this people leader, but then they're still rewarded and they still go towards the player side, the execution side, right? Because that's what we know and that's what we're comfortable with. I hope maybe this is a case for maybe not killing the whole player coach model, but definitely reinforcing that the coaching role should
Yeah.
be the bulk of that work, right? That's where we should spend most of our time. That's what we should be rewarded for. That's what our people deserve.
I think we should flip the term and call it a coach player.
Ooh, yeah. Reverse, nice.
Because just symbolically saying that's your first
Mhm.
responsibility. If your production, if your, and first of all, a player coach model should be should always best be a transition role, right? It's not a permanent. If you have a team of 5 that does very specialty work, that there's not going to be another set of people doing, fine. But for the most part, as a scalable org design tool, it's a transition role. But it should be on your way up to being and if the work you're doing doesn't require a full-time leader, then don't have one. But don't pretend to be one, right? So make it be a self-directed team. Teach them how to self-develop and self-coach and lead each other, and provide supervision and structure from a different source. But a player coach model is a design element that you use in specific situations where you're scaling on the way to something
it's
else.
overused, right? It's beyond that, right? They just keep that forever.
It becomes permanent, a fixture, right? And then it's like the boxes you move to your new home and you never unpack.
Yeah.
Right. We'll get to that next year, and then you move it to the next house. And so, and then people decide, oh, this is working, when it's really not working. And of course, the player coach goes, yeah, this is working, because I know that's what you want to hear.
Yeah.
But I'm dying, right? I'm exhausted. I can't do it well. I'm doing neither of them well.
Right.
And the people who I'm coaching can't stand me.
Yes. Yeah. And even your reference to that, what 2020, and now we're into 2021 when we're recording this, we're in February, as much as we've pulled it off, right? We've been scrappy. So but we have to move to that sustainable practices, right? Because those parents who turn their living room into, an office. I mean, speaking from I homeschooled my twins for 8 months last year, right? And I couldn't run a business. I was barely keeping it together because my son needed so much help. He has ADD. So, there's all these situations that come up that sort of distract us and prevent us from doing it. So we need our employers to think about how to help us moving from that scrappy to that sustainable, and hopefully moving more towards that coaching that these people deserve.
Yep.
I think it's great, Ron. So 2 last quick questions before I let you go. First one is, who else would you shout out doing good work in the ring around this culture and people, maybe even as a potential guest?
David Lansfield, a gentleman in Britain, just a brilliant strategist and thought leader on culture and a good-hearted man. Nihar Chaya, great thought leader on when it comes to our own self-comparisons and our own issues of envy and our own issues of how we see each other relative to other people in the workplace and how we all berate ourselves. You'll want to have him for sure. And then lastly, Rebecca Zucker, she'll also in my book studio, running a tremendous book on overwhelm at work and how we get paralyzed by too much work or get overwhelmed for all kinds of reasons. So 3 good friends and great smart leaders who you'll definitely want to meet.
Oh, thank you for those introductions. We'll make sure we put them in the show notes so people can follow along on their journeys. Last question here, Ron. What are some of your favorite resources that have advanced your own thinking? And I definitely do want to also talk about your book, because I think that'll help many.
I talk about I can't reach it, but it's so I'm reading Ryan Holiday's The Daily Stoic right now. For people who are busy professionals who are overworked or just spend too much time on screens, it is a great forcing function to train your mind and train your brain to think about what you can and can't control, to think about what the stories you tell yourself that may not be true. The way our brains play tricks on us. My ability to submit to the teaching is far less than my ability to read it. I'm learning. Another, I think, sort of for your guests who are looking to think about a bigger ideas about their own life, David White's book, Crossing the Unknown Sea, Work as a Pilgrimage of Life, is a brilliant book. I think I don't get to read it. My goal was to read it once a year. I've read it once every couple of years, but it is a great sort of pause and reflect on why you're here and why do you do what you do and why do you love it, and do you love it still? Yes. And it's a great check-in with yourself around your own pilgrimage of work as a reflection of who you are and your purpose in the world.
Yes. And tell us about To Be Honest, right? Your 9th book coming out soon.
To be honest, lead with the power of truth, justice, and purpose, based on a 15-year study of more than 3,200 leaders, and I'm super excited. I think the world is ready to we've raised the bar because our experience is lowered, right? So it's no longer enough to not be a liar. You have to say the right thing, do the right thing, and say and do the right thing for the right reason. It's truth, justice, and purpose. And that's what people expect. The great exciting part about this book was that I didn't want to write about the villains. This is not a book of Wells Fargo and Theranos and those people. This is a book of heroes. This is all the executive. I scoured the planet for people from not just the business world, but from all walks of life who are doing extraordinary things to live lives of honesty, to lead organizations of honesty and purpose. And talk to amazing people, Hubert Joly, the former CEO of Best Buy, and Vincent Stanley, the head of the philosophy at Patagonia,
Mm.
Balat, the attorney who took down DuPont in the movie Dark Waters, Kathleen Hogan from Microsoft, just some incredible, incredible folks who we can all emulate, right? I wanted to write the book that we could all pattern our lives after, that we could all pattern our leadership after, to say, I will wake up in the morning and I will have been more true to myself because I will have been more true about myself.
Mm. That's
And
powerful.
so I'm excited. I think it's going to be my goal. My hope is to change the conversation about honesty now and be more honest about honesty.
I appreciate that. I can't wait to get my hands. And it launches in May.
Yep.
Okay. All right. We will include the,
Pre-orders are available now, so pre-orders really help.
yes, for sure.
In fact, they are almost the single determinant of a book's success is how many you sell before it launches.
Really good. Okay. We'll make sure we include the Amazon link in our show notes for people to run. But listen, I appreciate this is a great conversation. You gave me a lot to think about, and I appreciate everything you're doing for culture and people in the world of work.
And it was a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. All
Yes.
the best to you.
Oh, you too. Peace and progress.